Thank you for staying with us here on Channels Television. You're watching the news at 5. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. We start off from the National Assembly, where the Senate has passed the Insurance Regulatory Commission Establishment Bill 2026, repealing and reenacting the law established in the National Insurance Commission (NICOM) and paving the way for the agency to be renamed the Insurance Regulatory Commission (IRC). The bill followed the adoption of the report of the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions. Presenting the report, Committee Chairman Senator Adetukumbo Abiru said the 1997 NICOM Act has become obsolete and no longer reflects the realities of Nigeria's evolving insurance industry or global regulatory standards. The legislation is expected to strengthen the Commission's independence, expand its regulatory powers, protect its officials in the lawful discharge of their duties, improve collaboration with local and international regulators, and enhance oversight of distressed insurance firms to safeguard policyholders and promote financial stability. The Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee (MPC) has retained all the monetary policy parameters after its July meeting. The monetary policy rate has been left at 26.5%, cash reserve ratio for deposit banks at 45%, while for merchant banks at 16%. Standing facility corridors remain at plus 50 minus 450, while the non-TSA public sector deposit is left at 75%. CBN Governor Olayemi Cardozo gave the announcement at the end of the MPC meeting held in Abuja today. Mr. Cardozo notes that while domestic economic indicators show resilience following past structural reforms, heightened global geopolitical uncertainties, particularly in the Middle East, continue to pose risks to energy prices and domestic inflation.
In arriving at its decision, the committee noted the recent resurgence of hostilities in the Middle East, with particular attention to its spillover effects on global energy prices and the potential pass-through to domestic inflation. Notwithstanding the development, available evidence suggests that the Nigerian economy has remained largely resilient to the external shocks, reflecting the gains from prior reforms implemented by the fiscal and monetary authorities. However, maintaining the current monetary policy stance will provide an opportunity to closely monitor incoming data and assess the trajectory of inflation to guide future policy decisions.
Back to the Senate, and the Red Chamber has broadened its investigation into the Safe Schools initiative, extending the probe to key federal agencies involved in education funding, student welfare, and social intervention programs. The expanded investigation will now cover TED Fund, NEL Fund, UBEC, the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, and the National Social Investment Program Agency in SIPA. Lawmakers also granted the ad hoc committee a 3-week extension to conclude its assignment. Chairman of the committee, Senator Orji Kalu, says preliminary findings revealed strong links between the Safe Schools initiative and agencies responsible for education financing, humanitarian support, and social investment. The committee will now examine funding flows, accountability mechanisms, student loan disbursements, school infrastructure projects, security interventions, and relief programs, all with the goal of strengthening transparency, protecting students, and improving oversight of public intervention funds. In the wake of the voluntary repatriation of Nigerian nationals from South Africa, many Nigerians who have registered to return home say the 5 evacuation flights conducted so far have not been enough to meet the growing demand. A South Africa correspondent, Innocent Samosa, spoke to Nigerians who have chosen to remain in the country to find out what support they expect from both the South African and Nigerian governments.
Well, for some, the decision to return comes after weeks of uncertainty following anti-illegal migration protest. Others say they are leaving behind businesses they've spent years building, investments they've made, and jobs they've created in the country. I had to sit down with Dr. Emeka Ugu, who runs a practice in Pretoria. He's married to a South African, of course. He argues that many Nigerian entrepreneurs living in the country have contributed positively to South Africa's economy through trade, investments, transport, and of course other sectors. And he fears that their departure could affect business links between South Africa and Nigeria.
Definitely, yes, it will cause a lot of havoc diplomatically, in terms of business relationship, in terms of interpersonal relationship, socio-political relationship, and far beyond that. You know, remember there are intermarriages also between South Africans and Nigerians. I'm married to a South African. We got married in Nigeria, got married here.
Ugu also warned that the uncertainty could undermine the objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Area.
We are shooting ourselves in the foot, you know, and that shouldn't be. If you go to Europe, for example, you have a Shanghai visa, you can easily go from France to Italy to Germany to call it wherever without inhibition. So they've made it easy for themselves to move very easily amongst themselves and trade amongst themselves.
While the country has maintained that it is enforcing its immigration laws and not targeting any nationality, businessman Chief Romanus Chukwemeka Naji, who has been in South Africa for the past 30 years, hopes both governments will continue working together to protect legitimate businessmen and strengthen economic cooperation.
I think the two parties, the two countries, the two presidents, the two authorities need to sit down and have a round table and dialogue and have a treaty over this.
He says the recent wave of protest have put a strain on foreign business owners.
To be honest with you, Innocent, this has been a big problem. I'm not going to say myself in particular, but it has affected everybody.
To better understand South Africa's immigration laws, I spoke to immigration lawyer.
In general, a private citizen cannot ask any other person to produce an identity document to prove their status, their immigration status, just because they suspect that such a person is a foreign national. So the law works in a way that police officers and authorized immigration officers, they're the ones who have the legal powers under the immigration laws to require any other person to produce their identification if they suspect that such a person is a foreign national.
As the debate over migration continues, calls are growing for solutions that balance the rule of law and the protection of human rights. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Back home now, let's talk some politics with the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, APC, in the August 2026 governorship election in Osun State. Bola Oyebamiji has promised to transform the state's agricultural potentials and infrastructural facilities if elected into office. He made this promise in an interview with newsmen during his campaign tour of Ila-Orogun federal constituency, comprising Ila, Ifedayo and Buluwaduro local government areas of the state.
Days after flagging off his campaign rally in Ile-Ife, the candidate of the APC in the Osun 2026 governorship election, Bola Oyebamiji, is forging ahead with his tour of the state. This time, it is the turn of the residents of Buluwaduro, Ifedayo, and Ila local government areas to receive the APC governorship candidate in their federal constituency. Speaking to newsmen in Ila-Orogun, Mr. Oyebamiji promises to revive agriculture, which is the mainstay of the economy of the area, into a world-class standard.
My message to the people of Ila is that, this is a place, this is an environment that agric is the major occupations of our people here. Most especially in Ila, we have the wool market here. and that this wool market is going to be enhanced. The enhancement is going to be a one that can be compete with any markets in the world. We're going to work on it. We are going to work in development of agriculture in this environment, apart from infrastructural development that we are going to bring into this environment. So I can assure them that they are going to have a taste of good government.
Some party leaders and chieftains on the campaign tour attest to the competence of Mr. Oyebamiji in providing quality leadership and impacting positively on the people of Osun State.
We are saying the theme of our campaign is that the election of 15th of August is about redemption of Osun, and that our party is poised to make sure that significant progress is made in the area of education, health, infrastructure, agricultural development, and tourism. We believe that our candidate, Muniruddin Bolo Ebamiji, a financial expert and somebody who has track record in terms of management, will be able to utilize the resources to ensure that we put Osun on the path of development, progress for today and for the future.
You can see for yourself the turnout of the people, which is the confirmation of acceptance of Alhaji Muniruddin Oyebamiji becoming the governor of Osun State. And going from Boluwadro, this is the starting point, to Ila, to Ifedayo, you will see that we are ready and determined to win this governorship election for APC by the grace of God.
The large turnout of supporters in the campaign tour of the APC governorship candidate in Ila Federal Constituency is quite encouraging and expected to end up in massive votes for the party come August the 15th, 2026.
The Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has presented compensation checks worth 3.1 billion naira to 331 project-affected persons whose land and property were acquired for major road infrastructure projects across the state. Speaking at the ceremony in Alausa, Ikeja, Governor Sanwo-Olu said the compensation reflects the state's commitment to balance infrastructure development with social justice, stressing that government has a moral obligation to protect the interests of citizens affected by public projects.
Residents affected by land acquired by the Lagos State government in overriding public interest converge on the Adeyemi Bero Auditorium in Alausa, Ikeja, to receive their checks from Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu for sacrificing their landed property for the development of Lagos State. The Lagos State Lands Bureau, in charge of collating those affected by public infrastructure, commend the beneficiaries for their cooperation.
We recognize the sacrifices you have made, and we assure you that you are contributing to the delivery of critical infrastructure that will improve the lives of millions of Lagosians today and benefit generations yet unborn.
Speaking on behalf of the beneficiaries, the Adeboruwa of Igbogbo Kingdom, Oba Semiuddin Kasali, applauds the state government for fulfilling compensation commitments dating back to 2016.
I want to convey the appreciation of Igbogbo, the Shawo community, Badagry community, some areas in the Ikeja division and other parts of Lagos that were affected by the removal exercise to pave way for the growth and development that we are all yearning for.
The Lagos State Deputy Governor, Mr. Kadri Hamzat, urges beneficiaries to remain active participants in the democratic process.
We must do this in Lagos because a distance that takes about an hour now takes 15 minutes. So we must continue to expand our roads, build this infrastructure. But what the government has promised is that if it affects your properties, you will be compensated.
Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu says the compensation was paid in line with Sections 28 and 29 of the Land Use Act, which empowers government to acquire land in overriding public interest while mandating fair compensation to affected property owners.
Development that ignores justice, they say it cannot command public trust. So we want to ensure that we're governing with a people face. We want to ensure that we're governing transparently and we're governing with a serious public trust. So today, we'll be presenting well over 3 billion to over 300 individuals and projects, affected persons whose land or property were acquired for strategic projects across the state.
331 landowners have been compensated with a total of 3.1 billion naira for partnering with government to provide road infrastructure across the metropolis.
Nigeria is hosting the 7th ordinary session of the African Telecommunication Union Conference, where decisions on the union's legal, financial, strategic and leadership framework for the next institutional cycle will be deliberated. Preceding the ordinary session, the ATU Preparatory Committee elected a Nigerian telecommunication expert to chair the planning and organization of the conference, which will see ministers of telecommunication and special delegates across the 52 African countries converge in Abuja to elect new leaders for the next 4 years.
The 2026 Conference of Diplomats, Experts and Representatives is preceded by a special session of the Administrative Council, the Regional Preparatory Meeting for the International Telecommunication Union, and the Conference Preparatory Committee meeting. Delegates from the 52 African member countries and 56 associates gather in Abuja to deliberate on issues affecting telecommunication sector across the member countries, draw a roadmap for the union and elect leaders, including a Secretary General for the union.
Distinguished delegates, as we begin our work, it is worth recalling that the role of this organ is quite substantial, and the nomenclature committee may not convey that role properly. Much of what the CPL will be able to consider depends on the work that we do here. Our responsibility is therefore to process every document and proposal that will be brought before the CPL vigilantly and to resolve what can be resolved at this level and present to the conference recommendations that are, as much as possible, agreed amongst ourselves.
The delegates also deliberate on affairs of the union over the past 4 years, as the Nigerian delegation look forward to welcome delegates for the conference proper.
I extend a warm welcome to all delegates and express our sincere appreciation to the African Telecommunications Union, its member states, sector members, academia, and partners for your steadfast commitment to advancing Africa's digital transformation agenda.
Africa's determination to prepare together and to speak with greater coherence on the issues shaping the future of telecommunications and the digital economy. May I acknowledge in particular the presence of Your Excellencies of the Diplomatic Corps. Your attendance reflects the wider international significance of the work before this committee, and we are grateful for it.
The 7th Ordinary Conference is expected to take key decisions that will shape the telecommunication sector on the continent over the next 4 years.
In Bauchi, the state government has commenced the disbursement of 1 billion naira in compensation to more than 300 persons affected by the 29 billion naira Gully Erosion Control Project being implemented under the Agro-Climatic Resilience in Semi-Arid Landscapes Project. Now, the state project coordinator, Mr. Ibrahim Kabir, says the first phase of the project is expected to be completed within the rainy season. Our correspondent, Hajara Aliyu, tells us more.
Excavation work is ongoing along the Gully Erosion Control Corridor in Bauchi Metropolis. Construction of the drainage system is currently in progress, and it's expected to be followed by fencing and tree planting as part of the environmental restoration efforts. What started as a small runoff channel gradually developed into a massive gully, posing serious threats to lives, property and livelihoods across 8 communities. The erosion stretches approximately 24 kilometers, with sections reaching depths of up to 4 meters, extending from Sohon Company to Gwalaga Mayaka. The remediation project is designed to mitigate flooding through the construction of drainage channels measuring up to 60 meters wide and 2 meters deep in some sections. The intervention also includes the construction of 11 tributary channels lined with reinforced concrete to effectively control stormwater.
We are hoping that we are going to cover almost 50% of the upstream within the rainy season in the next 2-3 months. And hopefully, towards the end of the rainy season, we can finish the entire upstream, then we'll go to the downstream. And the difference between the upstream and the downstream is that we have very big gully, or gullies, if I want to call it, including the fingers at the upstream. But at the downstream, it's mostly drainage. In fact, it entails a lot of, drilling, excavation.
The 29 billion Naira World Bank funded project also provides for a resettlement action plan under which 1 billion Naira is being earmarked for compensation to affected persons. Some structures located along the project corridor have already been marked for demolition, while AgriCell continues to engage and sensitize stakeholders on the implementation of the resettlement plan.
The project affected persons can play a role of collaborating with us voluntarily without, grievances. We're trying to avoid grievances. Then they also have a role to play in terms of ensuring the success of this project, of safeguarding it and also ensuring its sustainability.
Some of the affected residents speak on the impact of the stakeholders' engagement and compensation process.
We have been sensitized that the damage caused by the erosion will continue if it's not controlled. There is a likelihood of losing our property and also being infected with diseases.
This is the first major gully erosion control project undertaken by the Bauchi state government, and it is expected to significantly reduce flooding, restore degraded land, and protect lives, property, and critical infrastructure. Hajara Aliyu, Channels Television News.
Welcome to Business News. The Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission (NUPRC) says successful bidders for oil fields will have 3 years from the date of winning their bids to commence drilling and hydrocarbon production. The Commission says failure to meet the deadline will trigger the revocation of the asset by the federal government under the Petroleum Industry Act drill or drop provision. Speaking at the 2025 Commercial Bid Conference in Abuja, NUPRC Chief Executive said winners will also have 90 days to pay their signature bonuses. 37 fields are immediately available to investors, with the Commission projecting an additional 300,000 barrels per day within 3 years, supporting Nigeria's target of 3 million barrels daily by 2030. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission (FCCPC) has resumed enforcement of its 2025 digital consumer lending regulations following a federal high court ruling that upheld the validity of the framework. The Commission says the judgment removes the legal hurdle that had delayed implementation, paving the way for stricter oversight of digital lending platforms and stronger consumer protection in Nigeria's fast-growing online credit market. Several barriers continue to slow internet adoption across the region, including the high cost of devices, limited digital literacy, inadequate access to relevant content, and concerns around security and trust. A Senior Director, Public Policy and Communications, GSMA, Caroline Mbugwa, says addressing these challenges through the right regulatory policies is essential to accelerating digital adoption.
Certain barriers that now slow down the adoption of this service. So affordability of devices is one of them. Of course, digital literacy, access to relevant content, security and trust are some of the challenges that we see slowing down the adoption of internet services. This is a serious and critical issue, and this is where a lot of focus needs to be placed by regulation to be able to accelerate the adoption of service. Because when you talk about the intra-trade within the region, we are literally just focusing on about 461 million subscribers. Because when you talk about intra-trade, it needs to be digital trade. We are moving towards the era of the future, the era of intelligence, and digital trade is, if you look at the AFCFTA, one of the areas it emphasizes is digital trade. So there is need of developing, one, rules that allow for cross-border data flows. So these are within the Data Protection Act that are developed at a national level to avoid localization of data and encourage more of movement of data in a safe and accountable manner. We still have about 9% of the region not covered, and here, is mainly in the rural areas, hard-to-reach areas where rollout of infrastructure oversight, for example, would cost 2 to 5% more than an urban site, and it would be like almost 10% less in terms of the profitability. But this is where we can now complement and supplement some of these services with other technologies, so for example, satellite technologies. But for us to be able to do that and for us to encourage that partnership, there needs to be a clear framework, clear guidance that supports this at a regional front.
And that's News at 5. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. The World Today is up next.